Uncovered my sister-in-law's secret snooping addiction by baiting her with fake baby names, and now she's stuck with one of them. I 33F have been married to my husband Kevin, 35 male, for 5 years. We have a 3-year-old daughter and I'm currently pregnant with twins, M and F. My Bill Terrence, 38 male, has been married to his wife Jess, 39F, for 7 years. Jess and I are total opposites. Jess is an extrovert. She's kind of loud, boisterous and some would even say abrasive. I'm an introvert. I'm not quiet or shy, but I am reserved. I'm also very observant. The first time I met Jess, I told Kevin that we would be like oil and water. We have never been overtly hostile towards each other but also have never gone out of our way to bond. Unfortunately, Terrence and Jess had fertility issues for several years before finally having their son a couple weeks ago. Prior to this, Jess was very odd towards us when I was pregnant with our daughter. The best way to describe it is hot and cold. One minute she pretended like she didn't care while we were talking about it at family gatherings, the next she was volunteering to throw the baby shower. I gave a firm no to that. We both assumed the behavior was because of their fertility issues and didn't think too much of it. But the strangest thing she did was almost demand to know what we were naming our daughter before we announced it. She asked us constantly after our gender reveal and got visibly annoyed when we just laughed her off, and said it was a secret. We couldn't understand why the hell she cared so much as she was not expecting it this time. Regardless, we didn't share the name with anyone. When our daughter was born and her name was finally announced, Jess was kind of obsessed with it? I'd how to explain it. She just kept going on and on about how beautiful and unique it was. To this day she comments about how different it is. The name we chose is a pretty common Welsh name which wouldn't be all that different except for the fact that we are African American lol. I've always gravitated towards names from different regions and found and fell in love with the name years ago and never shared it with anyone prior to Kevin. Fast forward to both of us being pregnant at the same time. Jess' odd behavior continued towards me but this time it was more blatant. Snarky comments under the guise of jokes about how big I was going to get with 2 babies and that my body would never snap back like it did after our daughter. She even accused us of getting pregnant on purpose after she announced her own pregnancy even though the whole family knew we were actively trying and at the time of her announcement, I was already a few weeks along and didn't know. One thing about me, introvert or not, I'm no pushover and will stand up for myself. But, I chose to ignore Jess because I knew that would get to her more than confronting her would since she seems to thrive off drama. Jess was obviously much further along than we are, however, we did have our gender reveal prior to Jess giving birth. And right on cue, the baby name interrogation started again. Because they decided not to find out the gender of their baby in advance, Jess kept hounding us for both of the names we had already picked out. But again, we declined to answer. After days of this, I got annoyed and asked Kevin if he thought the reason for her insistence was so she could use the name first since she was due first. He kinda chuckled until he realized I was serious and said he didn't think so but that anything was possible. So I said, let's test it. We were due to host my Phil's birthday at our house a couple weeks later and I decided to leave something in the unfinished nursery with a girl and boy name on it and see if Jess went snooping. Because Kevin thought it was silly, he said he would give me $20 if she did it. So I went onto some site where you can order custom name wall decals and put in the names Aria Rose and Sebastian Ali. These are names that we like but aren't remotely close to what we chose. This will also be our last pregnancy so even if Jess did use them, we wouldn't care. I didn't complete the order. I got to the final page and then printed it out and hid it in a dresser drawer in the nursery. The party goes off but because we were busy hosting, we never noticed if Jess disappeared for any extended period of time. When I went into the nursery the next morning, nothing was out of place and the order sheet was still in the exact location. So we both just went Velp and forgot about it. I did however notice that Jess never asked us about the names again. Then Jess gives birth. We went to the hospital to give our congrats. When we go in and see the baby, I asked what his name was and man, I cannot properly explain the shit-eating grin that came over Jess' face as she says Sebastian Ali. I mean she was really proud of herself and honestly, it's the most vindictive I have ever seen her look in the years I've known her. But instead of reacting how she was expecting, I put on a performance like I had graduated from Juilliard. That's such a great name. He's so cute, look at his whittle face, oh I just love him so much. Welcome to the world, Sebastian. And he is gonna spoil you rotten. I mean I'm laying it on thick without an ounce of bother. The range of emotions on Jess' face went from shock to confusion to rage in a span of maybe 17 seconds. Meanwhile my husband is holding in the laugh of the century. We later say our goodbyes and he gives me a 20 in the elevator while almost crying laughing. All I could say was, like I thought, this was 2 weeks ago and we haven't seen them since because we wanted to give them time to settle in with the new baby. I have heard from my mill that Jess doesn't seem as thrilled about motherhood as she thought she would be considering how long it took them to conceive but said it might just be baby blues. Obviously, I think she's just disappointed that her petty move didn't have the desired effect on us. I did share this with my sister and while she laughed initially, she did say it was kind of an move. Update 1. Jess didn't break into my house to push me down the steps and steal my kid lol. I did get some additional info though that I can pass along. Before I get to that, I want to give a little context about my relationship with Jess to explain why I did what I did. Feel free to skip past it. To put it plainly, Jess and I have been in a one-sided beef since the day Kevin and I started dating. I give her zero thought if I don't have to, and yet, I live rent-free in her mind. Based on snide comments she's made over the years, the reason why is jealousy. Kevin and I dated for only a year before we got engaged. We then were married within 6 months of that engagement. We had an actual wedding with a ceremony and reception, went on a honeymoon, bought a house in the burbs and got pregnant, in rapid succession. Both of us have good careers and are financially stable. Phil and Gmeal all adore me. There is a churchy reason behind this that I will spare you on. Jess and Terrence did not have a similar path. They had been on and off since they were 19-20, with Terrence never really wanting to commit. During one of their breaks, Terrence got a FWB pregnant and now has an 11-year son. This has always been a sore subject with Jess due to her fertility struggles, fibroids. When they finally got back together, she pressed him for marriage until he relented and gave her a shut-up ring. They went to the courthouse on a random Tuesday, then had dinner at Red Lobster afterwards and went back to work the next day. Not trying to be shady, just relaying the facts. They now live in a 2BR apartment in a call city while working hourly jobs. They aren't minimum wage or anything, but constantly need OT to make ends meet. This has led her to resent me over the years. She thinks everything has come easily to me and has let that fester. There was a time a few years ago at a gathering where she got drunk and got into an argument with Terrence. I think her attitude that night stemmed from seeing me with my infant daughter. To hurt him, she blurted out that she married the wrong brother. Everyone was shocked. I wasn't. She just said the quiet part out loud and revealed what I already knew. So I poked her a little and said, "Really, which one? That's kinda gross since both were minors when you met them." Context: Kevin and Terrence also have a younger brother, Tim, 28. Boy, did she fly off the handle after that lol. To this day she claims to have no memory of that night. Anyway, now I know there is a new reason why she resents me. The update: like I said, nothing has really happened since I last posted. I haven't seen or heard from Jess since that day in the hospital. Terrence also hasn't communicated much with Kevin other than sports talk. However, my Mill has been with them almost every day. She came over yesterday to go over some last-minute things for our baby shower that we are having the Saturday after Halloween. I am not due till late January, but with the holidays and twins tending to arrive early, we just wanted to get it out of the way. Anyway, after finalizing some things, I asked Mill how Terrence and Jess were doing. She sighed and leaned back in her chair and said, "Girl, it's a mess." She goes on a long word vomit that I will have to summarize. Basically, they've been at it since before the baby was born. When they were discussing names, Jess' list only consisted of girl names. When Terrence asked what if it's a boy, Jess was adamant that it wouldn't be, but if it was, they would just use Terrence Jr. This caused an argument because Terrence's 11-yo is not named after him and it would be petty to name the second son a junior. Unbeknownst to me, Jess was having severe anxiety over not the name, but the gender of their baby. So much so that she refused to find out early because she was afraid of disappointment and she wanted to enjoy her pregnancy believing she was having a girl. She really wanted a girl. I mean really wanted a girl. This goes back to Mill emo. Mill is the only girl of 4 brothers. She had 3 boys. 2 of her 3 boys, Tim has a 6-yo, have boys. Then my daughter came along. Mill actually broke down in tears at our gender reveal. Since the day she was born, Mill has become a little obsessed with her lol. Not in a Jameel way. She knows and respects boundaries, but the whole family is aware that my daughter is Mill's favorite person in the world. I think Jess thought that by having a girl, she would get that same attention and affection from Mill as she has never been Jess' biggest fan. When that didn't happen, something short-circuited in her head. Mill's words, not mine. Before we arrived at the hospital that day, they were still fighting over a name. So I guess when I showed up she just blurted it out. While I still think it was to hurt me, it seems like it was also because she didn't allow herself to think of anything else because she didn't want a boy. I said in the first post how I noticed her expression, however I completely failed to notice Terrence's. He was pissed. Jess had never mentioned that name to him prior and he had no clue where it even came from. He also hated it. He refused to sign off on that and they left the hospital without a name. In our state, you only have 7 days from birth to register a name. She eventually told Terrence to pick the name himself and that she didn't care anymore. So he did. He swapped out Sebastian for Jordan but kept Ali. Yes, after Michael and Muhammad lol, according to Mill, since they've been home, Jess has shut down, emotionally. She's been doing all the motherly things, but there's a disconnect there. Mill said she finally broke down to her a few nights ago that she'll likely never have a daughter due to her age and what it took to get pregnant in the first place. I think that will bring them closer together since Mill never got the daughter she wanted either. I also felt bad hearing that because regardless of how I feel about her as a person, I do have a heart and would never want to punch down on her if she's in the throes of PPD. Jess still hasn't admitted to snooping. So I haven't admitted to setting her up. A few comments said I should never confess, but I think I will at some point. Mainly because I don't care lol. I am more than willing to burn a bridge while I'm still standing on it. But now simply isn't the time. So that's it. That's the lackluster update. Jess is invited to my baby shower so I might be back in a couple weeks depending on how that shakes out. Update 2. First, let's rewind to the baby shower I mentioned. I was genuinely unsure how it would go down, especially with Jess being invited. I mean, let's be real, things were tense, but I was kind of curious about what she'd do next. Would she play it cool, act like nothing happened? Or would she be a little more obvious with her drama? Well, my baby's shower came and went, and it was one for the books. Jess showed up, wearing this ridiculously loud outfit, I'm talking neon pink, leopard print, the works, trying to make a statement like she was still in the middle of a midlife crisis. She was so extra the entire time, and it was almost laughable. She wouldn't stop talking about how proud she was of the name Jordan Ali for her son. Yeah, she was still bringing it up. I could see the way she was looking at me, waiting for me to say something, waiting for me to give her the satisfaction of reacting. But you know me by now, I'm cold as ice, so I just smiled, made a few polite comments, and kept it moving. At one point, she did get all passive-aggressive and asked me how my twins were doing, as though she was implying I'd somehow forgotten about them in the midst of this drama. To keep it lighthearted, Kevin and I made sure to announce the gender and name reveal of the twins during the shower, because I'm dramatic like that, and I gotta say, it was a move that had everyone talking. We decided on the names Magnus and Lyra, names we had picked out long before any of this chaos went down. Jess, of course, gave us the fake smile and clapped, but I could see the steam coming out of her ears. She even muttered something about how different our names were, just like Arya and Sebastian were, except this time, she actually seemed uncomfortable, like she didn't know how to respond. I kind of enjoyed watching her squirm, if I'm being honest. But here's where things took a twist. After the shower, things got really weird. Jess started showing up at our house unannounced. At first, I thought it was just to congratulate me on the names or get in some last-minute bonding before the babies arrived, but no. She'd come over to try and subtly remind me about her son's name, like she was waiting for me to acknowledge that she had tried to one-up me with the whole Sebastian thing. She was getting way too comfortable, and I'll admit it, I wasn't having it. The real kicker? One day, she sat me down and tried to guilt-trip me into giving her the name Arya for a second kid. She didn't come right out and say it, of course, but her entire monologue was basically a transparent plea for me to be generous and let her have a shot at the name. I just sat there in complete silence, watching her slowly dig herself into a hole. Finally, I said something like, "Jess, you know that's not how names work, right?" And then, I just stared at her. Her face went red, and she muttered something about how she was just joking. I could feel her frustration building up, but I wasn't about to give her an inch. And if you're wondering whether she admitted to snooping, nope. She never did. But Kevin and I had a good laugh when we overheard her talking to Mill a couple of days ago. Apparently, she was telling Mill that she doesn't even know where she got the name Sebastian from and that it just came to her in a dream. I mean, come on, I'm sure it was just another way for her to save face, but it's kind of hilarious to see her scramble to justify it. But here's the thing I didn't expect. Jess broke down to Kevin. She came to him in tears and basically confessed that she's struggling with how perfect everything seems for us. She said she's been comparing her life to mine and Kevin's, and it's made her feel like she's failed in some way. The whole conversation was wild. Kevin told me about it later, and while I almost wanted to feel bad, I couldn't. The truth is, I think she's been so consumed by jealousy and resentment that she hasn't realized how toxic she's become. I almost felt sorry for her, but then I remembered all the petty things she's done to me over the years, and I snapped out of it. And now, Jess has gone radio silent. She hasn't reached out to either of us, and I'm starting to think she's distancing herself because of how much it's really eating at her. Her emotional meltdown about the gender of her baby and the constant one-upping was probably just the surface. Mill says Jess is still in a funk, but I think it's deeper than just baby blues. It sounds like she's having an identity crisis of sorts, and, honestly, I don't know how to feel about it. I don't want to be the one to throw pity at her, she's brought this on herself. As for the whole admitting part, I'm still keeping my secret. No, I'm not going to tell her I set her up with that name. Not yet, anyway. I'm not in a rush. If she ever does confront me about it, and let's be honest, she probably will, I'll be ready with the most nonchalant, "Oh, I thought I told you. I never intended to use those names," and I'll give her the most innocent look I can muster. Maybe she'll be embarrassed, maybe she won't. But either way, I'll have the last laugh. Now on to second story. Coworker targeted me relentlessly about my hunting hobby, only to be called out by others in a tense team meeting. I have this vegan coworker, we'll call her Vegan, who is very active on Facebook and in the office about being vegan and how cruel farming is and everything. Each to their own. I don't necessarily disagree with her views on animal cruelty, but here's the thing, I'm a hunter. Not a trophy hunter, but I do shoot feral pigs, rabbits, ducks, introduced, classified game ducks, and foxes, and I fish too. All except for the fish are classified as pests. Foxes especially kill native wildlife and farm animals, and farmers will often put you up on their property for free to hunt them. I have passed tests here, especially for identification of game ducks versus protected species, and practice ethical hunting, i.e., allow the animal to have a fair chase, no dogs or tracking devices, practicing marksmanship and dispatching prey swiftly and humanely and not wasting the meat. None of that is obviously good enough for Vegan. When she first came onto the team and told everyone she was vegan, I kept my mouth shut about my hunting. I also think she's really intolerant because she preaches to people about how going vegan will help with their various ailments and always turns up her nose at people heating up meat in microwave. As a result, we've kind of consciously started excluding her when we get up for lunch. However, last year I started going hunting more regularly with a work friend from another department whose uncle owns a farm where feral pigs and like are an issue, and he often swings by to have a chat about guns/bows and our next trip, and she found out I was a hunter. This isn't even at our desks, it's in the kitchen area that has tables and stuff. We sometimes eat our lunches together. Ever since then, every conversation I've had with her, she's referred to hunting and how cruel it is. One time, I wore a leather pencil skirt to work and she had a go at me for wearing animal products. She seems to have singled me because of the fact that I go hunting. My boss has no spine. I've tried talking to him about this, but she just intimidates him and makes it seem like she's been persecuted, and he's backed down from that. She even tried to get a vegan shelf in the fridge and tried to rope in some Hindu vegetarian guys to do that, but they pointed out that they use milk and cheese and honey in their cooking. They also think she's nuts. It's gotten to the point where we go out for drinks on a Friday night at 5 and we never ask her. I don't organize these things, a coworker does, but my boss told me, when I brought it up in one-on-one meeting, that she feels really left out and she seems to think it's my fault because I've been here for longer and I'm somehow poisoning them against her or something. I have since been conscious of this. If anyone starts conversation about vegan, I just say I don't talk to her unless it's work related and she's more than adequate at her job. It's actually become something of a joke or catchphrase. I told my boss I don't organize anything except official events and she's always been invited. If she's not invited to informal stuff, that's not even organized by me, then that's not my problem. The coworker that doesn't invite her, she managed to piss him off because he's eaten guinea pig. He's from Peru, and she asked him if he'd eaten any of his other pets. For the record, he never ate a guinea pig that was a pet. It's something they eat in Peru. Whenever she brings up hunting or anything, I just point blank ask her there was anything work related that she wanted to talk about, and if there wasn't, I would start talking to someone else or just walk off. I have asked her multiple times to keep conversations work related. I never start a conversation with her at all. Most of the time, she pounces when I'm in the kitchen making tea, getting water, or just stretching my legs. One time last week, a group of us were talking and she got up to join the discussion. A horrible silence fell over the group to the point where I just excused myself and went to my desk, and so did a few others. It all came to a head in our team meeting today when our boss, usually at the ends, asks if there's any positive news or celebrations outside of work people want to share, like engagements, marathons, charity appeals, etc., and Vegan sarcastically asked me how many lives I'd taken last weekend. I got annoyed and said her constant badgering me about my hobbies and choice to eat meat was discriminatory and bothersome, and that unless it was work related, she was not to engage me in conversation otherwise, and told our scribe to put that in the meeting minutes. She seemed a bit shocked by that and my boss looked uncomfortable but said fair enough. I thought that was the end of that, but right before our boss went to close the meeting, 2 other coworkers also put their hands up and asked Vegan to only engage them in work-related discussions, and that they were also uncomfortable being given non-medical health advice pertaining to their choice to consume meat and their diets. Again, boss looked uncomfortable but asked Vegan to respect their wishes and close the meeting. Vegan didn't look anyone in the eye after that, but headed straight to the bathroom. My boss was trying to get one of the coworkers to see if she was okay, and I think one of them eventually checked up on her, but she was in a cubicle and asked to be left alone. She eventually came out and asked my boss to leave early, which she did. I feel awful now. She embarrassed me in front of my team with a lives taken comment, so I pushed back, but I am caught between not wanting her to miserable and not wanting anything to do with her at all. A few of my coworkers and I ended up in a proactive conference call after this with HR, who basically said that always been subjected to unwanted advice and jabs about eating meat was not okay, but some mediation was in order to ensure cut the tension in the workplace. The HR rep then called my boss, who explained what happened in the team meeting and complaints that we'd made one-on-one, etc., but then he went into a meeting room and didn't hear the rest of discussion. Update 1. So the meeting happened on Friday. HR lady was a very much a let's all get along type and very enthusiastic and eager to mediate with buzzwords and talk about feelings. HR contacted me and I told them to get Vegan's perspective first so that she wouldn't complain not getting a chance to get her point of view. So Vegan, boss and HR had a meeting. I'm pretty sure Vegan made it seem like she had been bullied, which was pretty much what I was expecting. Then the rest of us were called into a meeting with HR to give our points of view. The coworker, who was a cancer survivor, had gotten progressively more annoyed at what happened after the meeting with Vegan taking off, so I told her she was welcome to take the lead in the meeting because her issues could have had an actual health impact. She took up most of the time actually talking about how Vegan kept giving her unsolicited, medically unsubstantiated advice on cancer treatment and prevention, and HR and boss started looking uncomfortable and concerned. A few other coworkers, like the one with celiac especially, also mentioned unsolicited advice. My Peruvian coworker brought up cultural insensitivity and the eating your pets comment, and I didn't know Vegan said this to the Hindu coworker, but apparently Vegan had told Hindu that veganism would make him a better Hindu because it eliminated all animal cruelty or something. A few people started laughing at this, and one coworker joked that Vegan was like the vegan Amway, always selling something that nobody was interested in. So I'd been pretty quiet at that point and HR asked me why I'd asked Vegan to only speak about work-related matters, and I told her that I'm a hunter and briefly explained that I believe in ethical hunting and how it befitted endangered species etc. But Vegan kept on calling it murder, had a dig at me for my leather skirt even though other people here had leather shoes, leather handbag, and HR injected that her Filofax was real leather, and I told her that talking to Vegan was stressful and demoralizing and she'd refused to respect my boundaries when I asked her on other occasions to keep things work-related. So then the mediation begun and Vegan was brought in and other co-workers left. I basically said exactly what I'd said before to Vegan with HR and boss there, that I respected her lifestyle choice and how passionate she was about making a change, but I disagreed with her on certain points, and even if she didn't agree with my lifestyle choices, it was unfair of her to single me out or harass me about them. Vegan said that to her, what I was doing was morally unconscionable and she didn't believe in exploiting animals. I told her that her iPhone, her clothes, her computer were all produced via human exploitation, and the quinoa that she loves so much has affected local income farmers in Bolivia. And then I qualified. I told her it was great that she had her thing to try and improve the world, but I also had a different perspective and different issues I was more passionate about, and that I had respected her point of view and she should respect mine. Vegan's response to all of this was it's still murder. HR looked annoyed at this point and said that Vegan was not trying to find a middle ground. So I turned to HR and said that this was why there was no middle ground, and that's why I thought keeping things civil and work related, because in the end we are here to do a job. HR agreed, boss agreed, I agreed, Vegan grudgingly agreed, and HR wrote all this down, and I had mediation meeting minutes saying all of this emailed to the four of us. Anyway, boss called us into a meeting around lunch and said it was good that we were able to talk about things outside of work because it's good team bonding, but it had come to his attention that there was unsolicited health advice and cultural sensitivity issues in the team. We'd be discussing that in our next team meeting, and we'd had a productive session but needed to focus on work and keep our spirits up. Vegan had a meeting with boss after that and then went home early. We had to come in on a Saturday, and today end of month stuff. This happens when the end of month falls on a weekend. I'm in finance, but we get time in lieu. I just gave Vegan a cheerful good morning to which she didn't respond, and when she said handed me a file and said she was leaving, I just said thank you for your work today and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Vegan kind of just grunted at me and left. I'm just going to keep it civil like HR said, and Vegan and dig her own hole. I still feel a bit sorry for her. I still think she feels attacked, but at least it got her off my back for the time being.